All right. Hello, everyone. I'm here today with Richard Socher, founder and CEO of You.com. They have really, really big ambitions, taking on some of the world's biggest problems, and the world's largest problem perhaps is search. The largest data set that I know of is certainly the web. Richard, welcome. Would you like to tell us a little bit about You.com, its goals and its mission?
I'd be happy to, and feel free to stop me at any time when I speak for too long, because I'm, of course, very excited about it. But yeah, the vision of You.com is to bring trust, facts, and kindness back to the internet. And we want to do this with a summary search engine, an open platform, if you will, that will allow anyone to get things done very quickly and get to the information they seek without having their privacy invaded, without a bunch of advertisements, without a bunch of crappy SEO content, and just get more quickly to the relevant things and get the intents actually executed that they're looking for when they use a search engine.
So why do you think something like You.com is needed right now? What made you think that this is the right time, and perhaps say 99 wasn't the right time, 1999?
That's a great question. I actually think 99 was probably a good time also for doing this. But the internet has actually changed significantly since then, right? In the early days, it was really powerful to be able to find this little nugget here and there from all across these very small sites. Nowadays, you actually have many larger but generally fewer content islands. You have all of Reddit and all of Quora and Medium, and you don't have as many super important single person's websites anymore that link in some link farm thing to each other so that they get ranking inside Google. You have these larger content farms, and so people have all these different personas, different dimensions of what they're looking for when they make a search. And so it's kind of crazy that we haven't updated how we search in almost 20 years. There's been very little innovation in such an incredibly important part of our digital lives. And so at the same time, I think information access is less of the issue now. It's actually the fact that there's too much information, that you don't know anymore which of it to trust. You don't have the time anymore to consume it all. And instead, what we now need to have is a search engine that helps you summarize, that helps you deal with all of this, and that summarizes it along all the different dimensions that you might have and that you might be interested in. And that's kind of where we're tackling it. And then on top of it, another way of thinking about why it is now the right time is that the entire economy is moving online. So it's not like some quick .com bubble anymore. It's very obvious the entire economy is moving online. And at the same time, you have this single gatekeeper in front of it that mostly wants to sell you, the user, to the highest bidding advertiser. And they have, as a single monopoly, sort of full control over what you consume, what you read, what you watch, what you buy, and all of that. And you have very little agency. You have very little control over that engine. And that's kind of crazy to think that, our information diet is becoming more and more important, and maybe for our mental health, even like more important than our actual diet. And so we need to empower people to take back some of that control that they have over their information diets. And third thing is that particular gatekeeper isn't even forwarding all of that traffic anymore to the rest of the world. Over 2/3 of all of Google searches are now 0 clicks, meaning they don't go outside of Google. So they're trying to keep every user in their own ecosystem, and every other company out there has to pay to be able to participate at all in the economy. And so when you combine all of these different factors, it's kind of a scary situation. And I think we need to start a movement to take back the internet. And There's some other ways to decentralize things a little bit. I think search still needs to be very fast, so probably isn't quite right fully on some blockchain, but you can unbundle this and actually open up the platform. And that's what we're doing with You.com, where you can not only contribute with your own preferences, which I can maybe show you here really quick, and we can jump into a demo maybe right after this, but you have your own preferences, but in the future, you can also actually implement applications, search applications that will show on that first website that you visit when you visit the web. And in that way, we can, it's kind of being used a lot as a trope, but democratize search to a large degree again, and opening it up so that everyone can participate, and together we can build a single interface to our digital lives.
Got it. Yeah, so I love the fact that you're ready to show the product and get into the weeds. We are sharing Richard's screen here, and it's exactly the right thing to do to see what the experience is like, and then we can dive deeper into trying to compare it to all the other search engines. I think actually people get too focused on trying to compare search engines, and so then I would love to just see what's going on You.com. Please take it away, Richard.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll just show you a couple of searches that you could make that kind of get a sense of what we're talking about here when I talk about apps and opening this up and having real user preferences. So yeah, just looked for the Foo Fighters, love the band, Dave Grohl and team. So here, you see Wikipedia app, and you can learn about some of the different things right from within your search results. You can also look at web results. You have your standard web results, and if you're younger generation and you've been swiping left and right and up and down on TikTok and Instagram for a long time, it's very intuitive. You can always see more of this kind of content, but you can also quickly jump to different kind of content. And in this case, you have a Reddit app, and you see sort of the summary of what people say on Reddit. You have a music app.
Funny that you've done that. I usually have to add Reddit to the end of my queries nowadays to get good results back.
You are not alone. You don't have to do that. You can just set the preferences. Yeah, maybe I'll just jump right into that since you started it so well. So you can actually set all your preferences for the different kinds of sources that you like or dislike. And then, across web, shopping, your news sources too. And, if you're really deep into image search, you can also look for different kinds of image search platforms. And so as you make these preferences, you'll see more of that. And that's what we mean by giving back control to the user. You have videos, they play automatically, and you can look at news, fan graphs. I actually don't even know this app yet very well. And, you have AP News, and you have a Twitter app. So you can actually follow Foo Fighters right from within the app. You can tweet something, you can go back to your account, and see all of that content right from within your search results. And here, you can kind of see each of these apps is in some ways a dimension of the kind of content that you might be looking for. So Foo Fighters is a pretty broad term. There's a lot of different things. You can have people also ask questions and so on. I'll give you just a couple more high-level ones. So here is one about Thai restaurants near me. I live in Menlo Park, Palo Alto. So, you have a Yelp app and you just see all the good Yelp Thai restaurants in the area. And, you have a map too and see, and we're actually not going to rebuild maps. So we're just using Google Maps here. In general, we are focused also a lot on developers, which I'm sure there are lots of them in the audience here. And here you can see what happens when you look for pandas, very common data structure. And this is actually a use case that we focused quite a while on, and a persona that we care a lot about, namely developers. We're excited about building something for them, but also building something with them. They will eventually be able to add their own applications to this platform. And so if you're looking for something with pandas, you can essentially very quickly jump between all your Stack Overflow potential answers. And then there's a very convenient copy and paste button right there. And boom, you just saved 30 to 200 seconds for each query compared to any other search engine out there. We have a W3 Schools app that actually lets you know the official right way of doing something, go through different snippets of code, And again, boom, copy and paste, and you're done with your query. In fact, you can even go further and say, I want to have a code completion app that just writes some code for me. And that's a little bit less obvious for pandas, which is a general term. So here, I looked for send SMS in Twilio, an API. You maybe want to hack something up quickly at a hackathon. The code completion app will literally write an entire function for you and just solve your problem. You can do like traverse a binary tree, and it'll just write the code right there for you. And so you can code with your search engine together. And, of course, there will be other kinds of apps. But in this particular case with Twilio here, it's a really powerful application of this code completion app, which uses a very large language model. And it's a little bit slow. This was already loaded just now to go through examples. But this is something also very unique that no other search engine provides. And I'll stop after 2 more examples. So excited to show you, and we can double click into all of these. But if you look for Ethereum price, you actually see a nice price chart. Unlike on any other search engine, it doesn't have a dose. And Medium is a great article. I'm sure you saw Andre's great article on Software 2.0. We also have a partnership with Medium, and so we can, basically you can very quickly access your favorite Medium articles. And again, have a nice keyboard control here too to jump between different results. And yeah, that is a quick whirlwind tour of you.com. And now that people have seen it, it's sort of much easier to talk about sort of some of the underlying ideas behind it. And maybe just the last note, we also have an incognito mode, which is actually the most private way to search anywhere online. We don't store your queries. We don't store your IP address. You can't make certain searches. It is, there is a small privacy and convenience trade-off. Namely, if you look for Thai restaurants near me, well, we don't have your location and we don't share your location with Yelp or any other third-party provider. So you won't be able to have certain location-based services. You'd have to type in weather in Palo Alto rather than just weather near me or just weather. And that is a trade-off that you can make, but it's very easy to switch back and forth, which also is something that I think privacy is important to get right. It's an incredibly important and big part of what we're doing. And everyone wants to have better privacy. But ultimately, convenience wins for 95% of people on the internet. And so the problem right now is that if you want to have real privacy, you have to kind of sacrifice relevance and convenience and just usefulness and getting good results. And so in our case, you can have privacy when you want it. And you also have convenience, and it's just one click away to jump between the 2 settings.
Very cool. So the beginning of the journey on you.com is still a search query. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. Every time you search for something, ideally it's your default, and you can just play around with whatever you want. And then, you go from there.
And then the incognito mode, I'm guessing that will then disable the apps that you might have enabled as well, right? So it seems like a big part of you.com is the ability to, first of all, connect apps that then surface results from those app providers, and then presumably they'll be not so customized if you're in incognito mode, which is probably fine because a lot of those apps seem like they were location specific or very much preference specific. Mm-hmm. So those are 2 loaded questions. First of all, is the app strategy a major part of the value that you're providing to users? Is being able to have these widgets, or I'm not sure if I'm using the correct nomenclature, so please correct that if it's wrong, but widgets that are coming from different websites embedded into the overall search experience, is that a major theme that is correct or no?
Yeah, indeed. It's a big part of you.com. It's basically the ability to search across all your favorite sources in one place. So if you want to, in the future buy something, we haven't focused as much on shopping yet, but we will very soon. And you have to go to Walmart and then to Amazon and then search the web, and then you go to some professional review site like CNET or PC Mag or Wirecutter or something. Then you'd have to go to all of these 10 places and separately kind of make the same search. And here you can do that in one convenient place and then have one interface to your entire digital life.
Got it. And so given that you still have the concept of a query, and it's a text string that comes in, people type it in, and you want to get better and better at serving people's queries, I'm guessing that in the non-incognito mode, it's okay for you to take the query and associate it with perhaps what interactions were made in order to improve you.com and make it better. Do you still do that? Or is that something that you're also backing away from, since that's a very traditional thing that all the search engines pretty much do right now?
Actually, it's mostly the big ones that do it, and the small ones that are very privacy focused don't do any of that. Or actually, even DuckDuckGo actually stores your query, and that's, I think, not ideal. I think if you're in incognito mode and you want to search for your address or your name, it should not be stored anywhere. And so in incognito mode, we don't store either the query nor your address or location or IP address or anything like that. And so that's important. Now, if you're in a personalized mode and you say, for instance, let me show you an example here. So let's say you like the Foo Fighters, but you're like, I generally like this Quick Facts app for my searches. Mm-hmm. You can actually move this app higher. Or, I personally like Twitter, so I can move the Twitter app higher and higher in my search results. And we actually will change this soon to just have a single thumbs up button, so it moves all the way to the top. But you have control over this interface and which parts you see. And as you move it higher and higher, now, maybe it's second location for me. Right after Wikipedia, I want to see Twitter first. So you have control over that. Now, of course, we need to store what kind of query you're making and have a sense of semantic similarity, since it is a rather technical audience here. I'll geek out a little bit, but you need to understand the semantics of what this query actually is in order to then say, for bands, maybe this person prefers to seeing more Twitter results. And so that's kind of how we're thinking about the queries and storing those in when you are in personalized mode. But again, if you're in incognito mode, you don't store any of that. Got
it. So one of the major problems that has to be solved in search quality when you're looking about the traditional searching web pages, you have to do the ranking problem for every single query. There's two difficulties with that. One is there are some queries that have to be very fresh. So the queries that are happening repeatedly, but have very time-sensitive information, news-related perhaps information. And then there are queries that are never seen before. So Google has this common statistic that they'll say, I forget the exact number, but maybe
10 to 15%.
Something like that of search queries have never been seen in the entire history of Google. So in the past 20 years, oh my God, never seen this query before. Now, you obviously have to be able to serve those queries, and then you have to be able to serve the super fresh queries as well. And those are two separate parts that I'm guessing you.com has answers for. And then your ranking, do you rank the apps individually for each query, or is that a user-wide setting? I just threw a lot of questions at you. So
I'll start with the last one. So indeed, the app ranking is kind of a unique problem that no one else really has this way, because no one, frankly, has innovated on search in the last decade or so. It's mostly either Google or some Google-like experience that isn't quite as good as Google. And so we're trying to really innovate on the UI UX as well as on the backend and the AI. And so we have to get really good at this app ranking mechanism. And of course, no AI is good if the training data is not very good. So we have to have a lot of training data too, and we want to have our users also feel like they're actually controlling the AI and not the AI controlling them, right? And this is something that's really important for us. So that's why these user preferences, they give a signal to the ranker, but they also give control back to people to not have one monolith tell them what to read, consume, and buy. and listen to. And so that to me is very important. And I think it's a big power of this platform. It's basically a combination of people's real true preferences that are explicitly stated, and an AI that learns from that. And of course, if the majority of users like certain apps over time more than certain other apps, then they will get ranked higher and higher, and the ranking problem will become a big problem, or just a big sort of general group inside the company, to get right over time. And eventually, of course, as different companies will have their own apps in here, it'll be very important to make sure that that's a fair system too, and not massively biased towards any particular app and result. So yeah, the app ranker is a big neural network, pretty big complex AI model, but it interacts with these user preferences.
Very cool. Are you so do you want to say anything about the freshness problem and the new queries problem?
Yeah, so we observe similar trends, and there's nothing that I can share that is like very specific to the fresh versus older queries. The truth is, yeah, the systems have to adapt very quickly. You have to continuously update your AI and your models. You have to continuously look at new data that comes in, and when you're in personalized mode and you want to have that personalization and convenience, and to know that indeed I want to have restaurants close to me, or I want to see more Reddit or less Reddit. There are also people who hate social media. They don't want to see those results, and then there are people who love it and engage with it a lot. So these preferences get stored and over time, and keep updating the systems.
Very cool. So there is a lot of new technology these days surrounding, first of all, summarization that uses language models as a base technology, perhaps actually transformers as a base technology, which became popular with language models and with summarization and other related work that is building on top of the transformer. Youcom is another speaker at ScaledML. He's one of the creators of the transformer. They've been getting a lot of love in the world of NLP, your world. And actually, Youcom and I were working together at Google at the same time back in 2005, working on language models.
Nice.
When I see you.com, it says the search engine that summarizes the web for you. I immediately think of NLP document summarization. And I would imagine that the best version of that currently is using the transformer and doing some fancy machine learning in that regard. Are you doing summarization that is sort of summarization in the NLP context? And then are you using some of the newer technology like the transformer? I imagine in the code production that you showed, that app that produces code, probably some there. Do you want to talk about that, or is that too under the hood? I'm not sure if I'm going too far deep here.
Yeah, no worries. I will. I have to hold back a little bit, and maybe off camera we can geek out in more depth. No pun intended. The networks are very deep, but we are using transformers in several places. Some obvious ones are query intent understanding. And then, of course, this ranking mechanism for these different apps and understanding when is an app a relevant app or not. What's interesting is we started out thinking a lot about summarization, and I've published a bunch of papers including like transformers and even pre-transformers on summarization, and we had some new evaluation metrics for summarization. The problem is a lot of times these models just don't have a really good sense of veracity and truth, and just factualness, like how factual the summaries actually are given the original source data. And so, like let's say you do an evaluation and the evaluation says, 98 out of 100 words were exactly correct in the summary. They were perfectly, it's almost too perfect in terms of that summary and the ground truth data. But the two words that were different were like John and Jason. And it looked kind of similar to a model, but if like one murdered the other, it's kind of important who murdered whom and not, accidentally mix that up. But neural language models, unfortunately, still very quickly make up stuff, right? You can just say like, and we built models too. You can give it a URL and say, this person who didn't win the presidency won the presidency, and it'll write an article about that, given all the training data. And so it'll make up stuff. And so it's very hard. Our values are trust, facts, and kindness at You.com. It's very hard to just let a neural language model just willy-nilly write out a bunch of text and then give that as the main result to our users. So that's just not quite, the technology is not quite there yet in terms of sticking to absolute like true facts, even, you know, assuming you have the right facts as an input in the first place, which is of course also a hard problem. On top of it, as an academic, we always think, oh, summarization, you have this, you know, long text in and short text out, simple X to Y mapping problem. But then users will come and ask for, you know, Thai restaurants near me. And you're like, the answer is not a long string of text. The answer is some really convenient tiles with reviews and dollar signs and directions and some pictures of what the food looks like, so you get a sense of where you want to go. The answer to the Foo Fighters might be all these, any of these, right? Might be just like, who are they? To like, oh, I love them already, I want to follow them on Twitter. To like, what do our people say about them on Reddit? Like it's very hard for you to actually know which of these dimensions is the right one. And so in many ways, having started with the idea of building a summarization search engine, this is our best attempt. It's a novel interface where each app is essentially one dimension along which you might summarize. And you can always dig deeper in, right? You can see like a less popular Reddit article if you scroll far enough. You can see a less popular Foo Fighters Twitter feed or tweet with fewer likes if you want to go deeper in that dimension. And so it's an interactive summary. And maybe a third point on summarization is that as a researcher, eventually I found the whole task of summarization to be incredibly under-constrained. What do I mean by that? If you take a certain research paper, let's say Elmo, to me, like an Elmo summary would have been like, oh, it's like contextual vectors Cove from Brian McCann, but instead of training with translation, it trained with language modeling. The model is bigger and worked slightly better across several benchmarks. But if you don't know Brian McCann, you don't know context vectors, you might not even know what a word vector is, then that's a completely useless summary for you. And maybe the summary needs to be even longer than the original paper, because it first needs to define what a word vector is, what's a neural network, how do you like train this, what's a data set? Like depending on the background of the person, the summary needs to vastly differ. And likewise, you know, you look for some conflict and you know exactly who the opposing sides are, and you've been following that conflict for several years. Hopefully, you know, there are sadly conflicts that have been dragging on for years. The summary of what's new in that is very different to if you have never heard of that conflict. And you're like, oh, I didn't even know like who these people are, where this country is, or whatever, you know, and like you'd want to learn about this from scratch. So long story short, I think with You.com, we may have a chance, if people give us enough preferences, to eventually be able to build something that actually gives them the right level of personalization. And again, of course, with that control over that system. But that is one of the dreams still for us to keep making that better. And maybe the fourth last point on summarization and deep neural networks and transformers is they are just too slow for search. Even if all of these other problems are solved, and you could take, you know, 20 websites with thousands and thousands of words, and the truthfulness would work, and like they actually don't make up content. They don't say, you know, they take a sentence where he did XYZ, but now it's referring to a different he because they took a previous sentence from somewhere else. So so-called anaphora resolution or co-reference disambiguation and resolution there. Assuming they figured all of that out, if it takes like 50 seconds to generate that summary, you're dead in the water as a search engine. So still more work to do. You can, you know, be clever about offline pre-training and things like that, or like pre-computing. I mean, some obviously also pre-training, but also like pre-computing certain answers to like common questions. But yeah, still a lot more work to do in deep learning for NLP when it comes to these really like fast, like speed requirements, latency requirements, and then of course the actual models.
Yeah, I remember that we had very stringent requirements, and I think in general, on the web, anything that loads more than 200 milliseconds, so a fifth of a second, is going to strain people's patience. So yeah, we got to get those models much faster. I have actually quite a lot of ideas on speeding up transformers and these models. So I don't think that part will be too hard. Like once we solve the other much harder issues, which is it has to be a summary at the correct level. A summary from my mother is a very different summary for you and I, is a very different summary for a general person on the internet. And so that's a very, like you said, unconstrained problem, almost not well defined. But perhaps if we have preferences from a person, then we can target the summarization correctly. Yeah, I can see that improving dramatically over the next few years as the research starts using these new deep neural networks effectively.
Yeah.
So maybe we can talk a little bit about the business side of things. So first of all, how have things changed since your last company? So I know your last company, it joined Salesforce, and then you were at Salesforce for a while. You were shipping code and AI there. Now you're doing this again, You.com, hopefully even bigger than anything else you've done before. How have things changed? What are your goals for this one in terms of business goals? So obviously technical goals, we've been talking about them. Business goals, what's up?
I guess in general, it's a business goal, but it's also like just a general impact goal. The goal is to become the next defining internet search engine of our generation, to learn from the mistakes of previous Web 1 or 2, and learn from just pure engagement driven metrics, and trying to hyper growth and build a monopoly, and instead trying to build a more equitable platform and learn from some of those early internet mistakes, and build something that's actually right for where we currently are in the world, and where society is at, to try to bring people back to a center, and of discourse too, and not just try to basically throw privacy completely out the window and be kind of part of a surveillance economy, if you will, and all of that. So those are actually our business goals. But of course, as a company, you're not going to be able to get anywhere close to any of your dreams if you're not making money. So we will have to explore different ways to monetize. And we decided not to do that right now because we want to do it together with our users, get feedback from them. And we're just still in the private beta. Once this video comes out, we'll be in a public beta, and we'll have just launched. And so maybe next year, we can start exploring things. But of course, if you're the default entryway to someone's internet, a lot of times people want to actually buy something. And what we will commit to is never doing targeted ads that are massively invading your privacy and pixels that follow you around the internet everywhere to try to identify what you want to buy before you even know you want it, and so on. But similar to some other smaller niche search engines, you can have private ads in there, and that could be an option that we explore. Of course, instead of advertisements, honestly, I would prefer to build a do engine rather than a search engine with ads. And so if you want to buy something, we just give you the content and all the reasons, pros and cons for the different options, and then you can just execute on your search right there. This whole idea of a do engine, we've really only scratched the surface off. You can see it in our searches when it comes to code, where if you want to actually look for how to send an SMS on Twilio, you can either find it here and click the copy and paste button, or maybe you get lucky and there's a perfect Stack Overflow answer, and you see these are kinds of the right answers. Then you just have that copy and paste button right there, and you're back in your code. Now, this isn't something that other search engines allow you to do, and this is just the first of many such action buttons, and you'll have to stay tuned for the next couple of action buttons that we're implementing right now.
I have perhaps what is a funny question. So I think in all of the demos that I've seen so far, maybe I missed it, but I think in all the demos that you've shown so far, when you put in a query, you get these, I'm not sure what you're calling them. The widgets are
search apps. Yeah, search apps.
You're getting search apps back. Do you have a search app that returns just like web pages? So like my Stanford web page is not in any of these apps, or some other web, like I didn't actually see any of that. Is that there?
Yeah, so that's often, yeah,
it.
I just maybe scrolled past it too much because it's like, oh, of course we have it. So
yeah,
it was about that.
Well, that might, yeah, you might have decided to consciously exclude that so that people really focus on the search apps. But
I wish we could. I wish we could. But the truth is, like, we have a hunch that whenever we have an app rather than web results that makes sense as the top, then we usually are better than any other search engine. And so the goal is, of course, to build something that's useful for everyone. But there's still a ton of very unique and niche things that maybe you do want to have. And not always do we have the right app yet. It will take, I think, a couple of years to have all the different use cases and have actionable apps right there for anything you might want to look for. And I think that's kind of where the power of this will come from. And that's where we can really build a movement. We'll probably even open source some of these apps so people can make them better and improve them further. And then, of course, people can contribute their own apps, which they don't have to necessarily make open source, and can also sell things within their apps. In
your public beta that's coming out, or will be out when this video is out, will you be having apps that outsiders have written, or have all of these apps been built by You.com developers at the moment?
Great question. We actually the answer is sort of, in the sense that we have some external agencies now that are building apps for us, but we haven't fully opened it yet to someone who has we're not paying them at all to build an app. So we don't have those yet. We're trying to squeeze it in before the launch, but there's just only so many things you can do. And this one had to make ways, otherwise we'd have to launch next year, and then we could have some nice hackathons. But yeah, you can look out for some hackathons soon after this video comes out, and some announcements to organize hackathons so that people can really jointly work together on this next generation of search.
Is the app SDK available yet, or that's the part that you're waiting on before the hackathons are done?
That's right. Yeah, we're probably going to launch that, and then soon after organize the hackathon so people can start kind of looking into it, test it out, give us feedback on it, and then we'll have an SDK, a sandbox environment, and things like that. Got it.
One last question I have for you, and then we can break with any comments that you have. So obviously, people are very used to doing search queries using strings of words. You fleetingly mentioned having query images. I think about computer vision all day long. Do you have the ability to query with images and video, or other modalities of queries?
That will probably be my only opportunity to give a short answer. The answer is no, not yet.
Not yet, but maybe later.
Of course, yeah. I think there will be ways and useful applications, and it has come up from a few users, but there's still so many other things that we haven't done yet, like booking flights. That's coming up very soon, and a couple of other things that we've gotten asked so many more times that we'll have to prioritize higher.
Got it. Very cool. Well, thank you so much. Are there any other last comments, last points that you would like to bring up before we wrap up?
No, yeah, I think it's an incredibly exciting time. I think we've seen companies like Hugging Face that kind of open up their platforms more and more. I'm very happy and excited and proud investor of Hugging Face since their seed, and it's just incredible to see the sort of explosion in creativity and excitement in the space. Having worked on deep neural networks for NLP since 2010 now, it's just incredible to see what that idea has done to the field. And remembering how hard it was in 2010, 12, 13 to convince NLP researchers that everything can be a vector, even multiple words. was, you know, it was hard at the time. And sometimes you doubt yourself, is like, is this the right way to go? Because they're like, you know, papers are getting rejected and so on. But there are certain things that just feel like they make so much sense once you've seen it, you experienced it, you can play with it. And my hope is that, you know, with You.com, that will be similar. And the equivalence here is maybe we won't beat all the benchmarks right away, but ultimately, I think an open platform will win because everyone can start to collaborate on it. And we've seen something like that in neural networks and deep learning for NLP, and I think we'll see it again in search, and hopefully I can be part of that one too. And so, yeah, of course, maybe as a last comment, a lot of times people talk to the CEO, and you know that makes sense, but we have it's hard to underestimate how important the team has been to be able to make this all work. My co-founder, Brian McCann, he actually also implemented a big, deep neural networks. For a brief moment in time, we had the largest neural network language model before GPT-3 came out. And then it's like, okay, now we don't have to work on that anymore. We worked on largest protein sequence models, which were also interesting, and we still had a chance. But yeah, so Brian, our engineering team, design team, and so on, like this, it takes a village to build something like this, and it's still a very small village, but hopefully we can grow that also.
That's awesome. I hope You.com becomes successful, and we have more search engines at our disposal. Thank you, Richard. Very much appreciate your time, and see you soon.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's up to you all to install the Chrome extension and make us your default.
Cheers to that. Thank you.
Thank you.